In the video I released on July 9th, I explained that autologous stem cell transplants, the type that my mom and I had, infuse your own stem cells after receiving the high-dose chemotherapy versus allogeneic stem cell transplants, which infuse donor stem cells. I didn't witness the harvesting of my mom's stem cells. Judy, her best friend from childhood, was there with her throughout that entire process. But based on their reactions, which you get a glimpse of in the first moment of July 15th in my book, it didn't seem particularly noteworthy or uncomfortable. And I for sure would have heard that from my mom had it been anything less than enjoyable. There was a 7-year gap between my mom's stem cell transplant and my stem cell transplant. And while I think that the harvesting process has stayed largely the same, the first major difference I noticed is that I had to inject myself with a drug called filgrastim in the 4 days leading up to the start of that process to help my body boost its production of stem cells. In my earlier inpatient treatments for IGEV, after my hospitalization completed, I would have to get a shot of Neulasta, which served a similar function. One of the side effects of that drug, and it was a side effect of filgrastim as well, is bone pain, which was a feeling that I had never experienced prior to going through cancer treatment, in that it was radiating from the inside of my bones. So it wasn't exterior at all. It wasn't as if I had been hit really hard and bruised and just the pain was on the surface level. It truly was coming from the inside because it was from the bone marrow really stimulating the production of stem cells. And so it was just really uncomfortable and intolerable. And I couldn't ever get comfortable because it was all my bones were just creaking and aching and radiating pain. Thankfully, the painkiller tramadol did help, but I didn't want to become dependent on it in any way. So I just would only take it at night when I was going to sleep. And I would just try to manage the pain as best as possible during the day with Tylenol. That started happening again as I was injecting myself with the filgrastim. And also, injecting yourself is very strange. Though I do know now with the rise of Ozempic, people are a lot more comfortable with that idea. But at the time, I definitely wasn't. And it was very strange and I thought I was just going to mess up. But there were these safety needles that the moment you injected the full amount of the drug, it would retract, like a spring-loaded retraction, so that there was no way that you could stick yourself again with that needle. And I'll post a picture of that just so you can see kind of the mechanism once it had retracted. Another side effect of the filgrastim, and it also happened with the Neulasta shot, is that because your body is mass-producing stem cells, the ratio of your blood cells gets thrown off in a way that you get really feverish, you have trouble regulating your body temperature, and of course, then you end up with night sweats. The evening prior to the first day of harvesting the stem cells, I received a shot of a drug called Mozabil, which basically moves the stem cells up to the peripheral blood so it makes it easier to harvest them. With my stem cells boosted and primed, I showed up on the first day of harvesting to this special clinic in the hospital where I was situated in a bed, and then the nurse inserted a regular needle into my left arm, and then she inserted this very uncomfortable, more hollow plastic needle into my right arm. And those were both threaded to a machine beside me, which was basically drawing the blood, pulling it into the machine. The machine was extracting out the stem cells, and then it was returning the blood into that plastic, more hollow needle, which is why it was necessary and it couldn't be just a regular, normal, comfortable needle. So I'm going to post a picture of me in that situation. You'll see the inputs and the outputs. You'll see the machine sitting beside me. What you don't see is how uncomfortable it is to be in that position with your arms out like that, knowing that there's needles implanted in you, that anytime you move in a significant way, you're going to get a jab. So it really limited my mobility. It also limited my ability to do much of anything because I couldn't really be on my laptop and moving my arms like this, to move around because they needed to be out. And I also wasn't really enjoying using my phone either because I had to be positioned in a way where it couldn't be close to my face. It just had to be like down and away from me because I couldn't bend my arm like this. And this went on for about 3.5, 4 hours. You can't go to the bathroom during that time. Well, you can't get up to go to the bathroom during that time because you can't disrupt the outputs and inputs and, come back to it. So you have to try to survive for that entire duration without going to the bathroom. I did that the first day, wasn't so lucky the second day and had to pee in a canister under a blanket, which was particularly difficult for me because I am very, very pee shy. But, I was desperate enough that I made it work. Also very tricky to navigate taking that canister away without spilling all the pee on me after, but I managed to do so with just a little dribbles. thankfully. After I finished with the harvesting, I went back to the hotel I was staying at next to the hospital, which I was doing so I didn't have to transit back and forth between UCLA and downtown LA, just to avoid any potential risk exposure to COVID, because if I got COVID, then I wouldn't be able to get hospitalized for the stem cell transplant. So out of utmost caution, I was staying at a hotel. It was also convenient because I then had to go back to the hospital later in the day again to get that Mosabil shot ahead of the second day of harvesting. So it was just more convenient to stay at a hotel nearby. I was pretty depleted from the entire process. I don't know if it was because of just the blood drawing and returning back to me without stem cells, or it was just because it was kind of draining and uncomfortable sitting there for such a long time. Either way, I took a nap. When I woke up, I had a voicemail from my patient care coordinator, and she let me know that I had only harvested 800,000 stem cells that day. I needed to harvest 2.5 million to be eligible to do the stem cell transplant. I was really discouraged. I also couldn't help but feel like I wasn't being set up to have a good stem cell transplant. It was just bringing back all the bad memories of going through my initial rounds of ABVD and not having a good response to the drug. And clearly in this case, I wasn't having a great response to the filgrastim because I hadn't been boosting enough stem cells to be able to be harvested. And I was worried that I would need to be going through 4 more days of this uncomfortable process, and then I might not even have enough at the end of that to be eligible to even do the stem cell transplant. So I was kind of a mess, needless to say. What's interesting is that in the moment in the book when we're at Upstream Brewery and Judy is really pepping up my mom because she had officially harvested all the stem cells she needed, whereas Georgia had to go back another day. So in this case, I was the Georgia, and it doesn't feel good knowing that you're not having the best response. You're going to have to keep coming back. You have no control over whether or not you're going to harvest any more stem cells than you did the day before. You just got to hope for the best. I did get another one of the Mosabil shots that evening, and then I showed up on day 2. It was the exact same process, but this time I was sitting there wondering about whether or not I was actually getting enough stem cells. And it's not like there's a ticker as the blood is running through the machine that's telling you exactly how many stem cells are collected. You're completely blind to the process, so you do have to just wait until that analysis is done. Unlike on the first day, I couldn't pass time by taking a nap because I was such a ball of nerves as I waited to hear back from the patient care coordinator. When they finally called, they let me know that something miraculous happened and I had harvested 4.3 million stem cells that second day to put my grand total at 5.1 million stem cells, over double of what I needed to be eligible for the stem cell transplant. I was overjoyed and relieved, but also skeptical because that seemed to be such a crazy jump from such a low turnout the first day to such a high turnout the second day that I was worried that they had miscounted or something and that I would head back home, and then the next day they would call me and say, we actually miscalculated and you have to come back and now harvest so many more days and go through that process again. Thankfully, that didn't occur. I actually had that many stem cells, and it was the boost that I needed to feel a little bit more confident as I went into the stem cell transplant. Now, having gone through the process myself, when I reflect on meeting up with my mom and Judy after my mom had finished harvesting her stem cells, I think the reason why she didn't complain about the discomfort, the sitting around for 4 hours, the needles in your arm, the worrying about whether you're collecting enough stem cells, is because Judy was there to distract her in conversation and engage her in memories. And that is the power of a caregiver and the main differentiating factor between my mom's experience harvesting her stem cells and mine. Tomorrow, July 16th, I'll be uploading a video where I compare the room that my mom had during her stem cell transplant to the room that I had during mine. So hit subscribe, leave any questions in the comments. The link to the book is in the description, and I'll see you all tomorrow.